Salvian meets Severe in the northeast of Gaul, where the Huns retained the detachments of the Burgunds who wanted to make their way through Gaul. A pale December sun runs through the cold air. The Roman officer is dressed in a superb fur-lined coat of wolfskin, while Severe wears a coat practically the same cut but with the fur outside and lined with fabric inside. The friendly dinner of the two officers near the wood fire is this time accompanied by local beer and ham with cabbage. Severe puts wood on the embers, reaches out to the fire and asks the Roman officer competent in military history. The Burgunds are an interesting people distinguished from other Germanic peoples. They have more cavalry and are better organized, similar to the peoples of the steppes. Did not they have their Argobast who governed the empire? Arbogast, correct Salvian. The Burgunds appeared on the borders of Gaul recently and became the allies of the Romans, then settled in Helvetia and also in a valley of the Rhine nearby. Only about 20 years ago at the time of the Emperor Honorius. So they treated with this imbecile that we were protecting, smiled Severe. That is why they are violating the terms of the contract and we are bored in these wooded mountains. Fortunately, after the operation against the Franks I rested more than a year on the banks of Irtish. Even for me it is difficult to stay long in these forests. And the warriors who have come from the arid steppes of the Aral Sea become melancholy here after 3 or 4 months. It is good that there is a frequent rotation of our mercenaries. Soon I will return home and go hunting in the mountains of Altai with my friends. For us, exploits, adventures, trips to new countries are more important than wages. Few Huns aspire to stay here longer to earn more. Salvian remembers his conversations with Eudox et al. Then his thoughts return to the Burgunds. The Burgunds had serious misunderstandings with the Empire some 60 years ago. Their army was then estimated at 80,000 warriors. They are said to be conducting negotiations with the Visigoths for joint actions. Severe remarks, if one recalls the so-called Emperor Attalus, proclaimed by the Senate at the request of King Alaric. The Visigoths also had a Roman emperor. Thus among the great allies of the Romans in Gaul, only the Burgunds have yet placed no one on the imperial Roman throne. Besides, it seems to me that they too have proclaimed a puppet emperor in Gaul. Salvian confirms, that is true. A usurper Jovinus, a member of the Gallic nobility, was crowned at Mayence by Gaul, king of the Alans, and Gunterius, king of the Burgunds. Then he argues, but most of the Romans, in 409, continued to recognize Honorius as their emperor and Attalus was dismissed by Alaric at the end of a year. The officer Hun says with contempt, Honorius was married successively to the 2 daughters of his mentor Stilichon, a general of Vandal origin. Stilichon relying on the Hun and Alan cavalry. He was a general who knew very well who could be counted on. He was able to overthrow this ungrateful person of Honorius and put a tin-pot emperor in his stead, but he was a man of honor, and remained faithful to the memory of Theodosius the Great, who had entrusted his son to him. Salvian becomes sad at the reminder of the strength and influence of the barbarians and the weakness of the Roman emperors. This is absolutely true. And it is only by opposing the barbarians against each other that the Western Roman Empire is still standing. Severe begins to speak of the military art of the Burgunds. The Burgunds and Goths now have a lot of heavy cavalry, but their battle tactics are very simple. They advance with warlike cries and holding their long spears in both hands, hoping to produce panic among the enemy. When 2 such armies collide, the shock is terrible. But the surviving fighters continue to gallop forward, then turn around and repeat their attack. This time they took refuge behind the line of infantry armed with archers, long spears, and protected by a wall of great shields. After that, they recover their breath, set themselves again in order of attack, and repeat the maneuver. Before, when Salvian waged war under the command of Constans, the Visigoths had more infantry than cavalry, which is why he asks the question, do the Goths also have a similar tactic? Exactly the same. Such a very simple tactic, according to the choice of the battlefield, does not require a special command. Often the warriors do not perceive before long the death of their commander during the battle. How can we explain that the Goths, especially the Ostrogoths, have not borrowed the Huns' methods of the war? Sabia smiled. I think centuries will pass before their leaders begin to learn flexible methods of command. This requires a very long training of the troops, which the Huns acquired during the great hunts and the raids. Advancing, after prayer, straight on the enemy with a spear requires very little training, while to shoot with the arc in motion, with great precision, and if necessary, continue shooting behind his shoulder. A rider must train all his life since childhood.